What if you had the resources you needed for your mental health right at your fingertips? Imagine a world where our mental well-being is prioritized just like our physical health, and where we have access to the tools and support we need. That's exactly what the Make Mental Health Matter show is all about. Join Kelli Melissa Reinhardt, a true warrior for mental health, founder of Make Mental Health Matter nonprofit, author, and wellness coach. This show is your gateway to breaking down the stigma surrounding mental health. Tune in for enlightening conversations, expert insights, and empowering stories that will not only increase awareness, but also provide education about mental health. It's time to have those hard conversations, prioritize your well-being, and make your mental health matter. Your mental wellness journey starts here.
Episode of the Make Mental Health Matter show. I am your host, Kelli Melissa Reinhardt, and I'm excited. We're back in the studio. It's been a really long time. As you've probably noticed, if you've been watching or listening, well, listening you probably didn't see, but if you've been watching, I've been doing a lot of episodes online in virtual, but we're back in the studio, which I'm so excited because my guest today, Jesse, we are going to talk a little bit about his story, why he does what he does, and just the importance around mental health and being able to support people on all different levels. So I'm excited for him to share a little bit more about what he does and how he helps individuals. So without further ado, because we're in the studio and I can't go on my rants because they can see you, so it's not like I'm bringing up a guest, but I would love to introduce you to Jesse Pfister. Did I say it?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. It's in my brain and I'm like,
So, you got it.
tell the audience a little bit about your story and what you do specifically.
Sure. Well, I would say I'm a doctor of clinical psychology. I'm licensed in Colorado. I'm also a PsyPAC provider, so I work in 40 states. So I offer mental health services. I do individual therapy. I do psychological assessment throughout the lifespan. I didn't anticipate ending up in psychology, actually. So I came at it kind of a roundabout way. And for me, what was really impactful in early adulthood was actually philosophy. And that was a bit unintentional too, but I ended up doing a lot of philosophy, and that's how I healed some of the things that I was experiencing. But in that, there's a lot of psychology, I think, so they're very closely related. So I like what I do as a psychologist, and with a PhD, I have that background in philosophy that guides how I approach mental health. So I like that kind of combination where I get to help people.
Yeah. So what led you, I know you said it was kind of in a roundabout way, but like and you had to do some healing yourself. So tell a little bit more about your story specifically.
Sure. Well, I was raised in evangelical Christianity in Montana. So my grandfather was a very well-known pastor there. He ran a 200-mile circuit. So he started a lot of the churches there. He was just thousands, tens of thousands of people knew him. And he ran summer camps up there and all kinds of things. So really well-respected member of the community. My parents were youth pastors, so for me, everything in my life growing up, first 20 years was church related. In my early 20s, however, I started to think really deeply about the things I'd been taught. I actually wanted to take my faith further, so I started to look at what I believed and why I believed it. And that's sort of what I would say is the entrance into philosophy. It wasn't kind of a formal academic process. It was just, this is what I need to do to kind of work out the knots of things that don't make sense. And that for me ended up in what in the literature is called a spiritual or religious crisis. So I ended up actually homeless under a tarp in Butte, Montana for 2 months. And as I tried to just sort out what was going on with my faith. That culminated in a profound human experience or a spiritual experience um, that I wasn't prepared for because nobody told me about these kinds of experiences. So here I am thinking like, oh, I've had this experience that nobody's had before. So I ended up getting a master's in transpersonal psychology, which is kind of like how do we make a science of spiritual experiences? How do we categorize them? How do we study them? And that was extremely helpful because I got to get the language to talk about some of the things that I'd been through. And it was very healing for me. So in that process, I ended up leaving the church, and that came with its own ruptures. So, kind of a loss of my community. And I had to find my way in the secular world that I wasn't familiar with. And that was a long process. It's just, if you're not raised in that, and then you're stepping out, trying to make those connections, I think there's a lot you don't know. You don't know how to act. You don't know what to do. So, a long time, I ended up working for the post office for a while. I got into social work. And then I wanted to write more about what I'd been through. So I wanted to create a spiritual memoir. And that's been a long process for me. And I was working at the post office one day. I remember it was day 6 of a really long week. I was super tired. And it just kind of clicked that I was trying to essentially write a dissertation. Like I felt like I had something to say, I had something I wanted to prove, and I needed the resources to do that. So I was like, oh, I'm going to get a doctorate. I'm going to get go for psych. And I was planning to do theoretical, and I was just going to do this to write. But then I kind of got nudged towards clinical, and I'm like, well, I do need the degree to pay for itself. So I ended up as a clinical psychologist, and I actually love that. I think it's a great background. It's a great kind of fulfillment of where I come from, the things I've done. So I love helping people today, but at heart, I'm a little more philosopher than psychologist.
Awesome.
So.
Well, and I know I always talk to all my guests before they come on. And we generally don't go political or religious route, but I also believe that if it's part of your story, right? Which, I mean, that was all of your life, like everything that you knew, really. And it is, I feel like a lot of people find themselves in those positions. And I know I've talked about it before on my show, but I was born and raised Mormon. I was born in Utah. I've lived in Colorado since I was 7. So very different cultures, even though there's like a mountain that separates the two. But it also, you had your certain beliefs and experiences over here in Utah, and then Colorado was so different. And I've also had guests on the show who that was part of their like how they were raised, and then also they had to disconnect themselves from their beliefs, like everything that was their whole family, all the things. So it's fascinating. And I also, so a couple things you said as far as like when you were homeless and then you had the spiritual awakening, which I also believe in the universe, source, spirit, right? Because we are connected as humans, our mental, our physical, and then our spiritual being. Mm-hmm. And I do know that even back in the day, that's how when you went to a doctor, it was the whole body, not just your brain or just your body. Mm-hmm. It was like the whole encompassing everything. So I have moved much more towards talking about even the spiritual aspects. And it doesn't mean that you have to believe in any certain faith. It's just that, and maybe you do, right? And that's okay too. We all, again, have different experiences as humans, but I think it's fascinating. I'm sure it wasn't fascinating during those 2 months that you were homeless, but also shifting into this person that you maybe didn't ever foresee yourself to be, and then going back to school and you're like, I think I might get a doctorate, right? Like, it's cool, just a couple more years or a few added years, why not? And I know for me, I have a communication major and a minor in psychology. And I went to school, changed my degree about 1 million times. And then I went back after 10 years and I was like, okay, I got to do something with my life and with my degree. And it was a really great paperweight for a long time. And then I actually use it now. So, but I love that. I mean, it was like this roundabout way how you got into what you do. And you've lived a lot of experiences through that.
Yeah. And I think that there's a respectful way to have these conversations. When I work with clients in therapy, one of the first questions they ask when you're kind of building your like marketing niche as a therapist is like, who is your ideal client? And I thought back on the people I'd worked with. And because of what I've been through and the fact that I was able to, I think, heal myself from the the conflicts that came up and some of the internal strife, I love sitting with people who are wrestling with these things. And my goal is never to get anybody to believe a particular thing. I've had clients who are um, faithfully, religious, and clients who've stepped away, and clients who are in between. And I love working with all of them.
Yeah, and I think that's so important. Even so, um, we've been with my nonprofit, and so this is almost like really timely. With my nonprofit, we have been thinking about what you and I have talked about, but adding a layer of coaching and there, or not coaching, but counseling and therapy to what we offer currently. Because right now we're just in the coaching and holistic space, but we have made a connection with a group that was originally the counselors themselves. It was funded by a church, no longer. And so we've had these conversations of like, how do we involve and be very inclusive, because our demographic is everybody, right? Like we don't exclude anybody. And there are multiple demographics that we do serve that are very anti-church, and then we have demographics that are very pro-church and or faith in general, right? And that can even be on the holistic side. A lot of people sometimes when they go to providers that are not licensed or clinical, then they're like, well, they don't work because they're the word, right? Woo woo is a word that everybody uses. But if you think it's that spiritual aspect that some people might be afraid to tap into. So I love that you are open and work with everybody and anybody, which I believe that psychologists should.
Yeah, it is an important aspect of human experience, and not for everybody. I think some people just kind of want to get out of that and feel like, okay, that's not for me. But for so many people, like when I'm working with them in therapy, often the end goal is that they have a full fulfilled life, like Maslow's pyramid, right? We're self-actualizing, we're out in the world, and maybe even we're touching into the transcendent. And it's not my job as a therapist to tell you what's right, what's wrong in terms of your beliefs. What I'm looking for most of the time is how you believe, what you believe. And for instance, is it rigid or is it open? Are you open to looking at things in multiple different ways? That's where that's where it gets pathological. That's where, people suffer.
Yeah. Well, and
So,
that's, I mean, I love that you just brought my brain just went whew, into another place. But um it's like when you're battling these two things and you're like feeling like you're stuck or you're in between or you're not sure which way to go. And so many people, they want just the answer, right? But the answer lives within us. We just have to have somebody that can help guide and help us process whatever we're going through. And I believe that's why even the whole continuum of care really really works. And having somebody that is clinical or licensed and or trained, certified, is really impactful.
yeah, part of our training, I mean, huge portion is I had to get 3,000 hours of supervised work, and all of that work and going to your own therapy is all about how do I take my own bias out of the clinical room. When I'm treating you, I'm there to help you get better. That's my goal.
Yeah. And that's what I mean. So my nonprofit, we teach people part of mental health first aid. They talk about non-judgmental listening. And oftentimes people are like, I listen all the time. And I'm like, yeah, but do you try to fix people? Do you try to, you know, add your advice or your story in it? And I think we're so conditioned as humans in a way to insert our own experience before looking at other people's experience. So it's not as easy as it sounds.
No, it's very hard, and it's something that I think we're constantly working on. And even after licensure, I do a consultation group, and
Mm.
we're constantly like looking at our own biases and talking through cases with other colleagues so that we can, the goal is to do no harm.
Yeah, which
So,
I love. We're gonna go to our quick first sponsor break,
okay.
but once we get back, we'll chat some more. I don't know, we'll see where it goes. So we'll be right back after this quick sponsor break.
Have you ever felt completely alone?
Like your life doesn't matter.
One person dies due to suicide every 40 seconds.
You are not alone. Call the National Suicide Lifeline at 988.
Hope and recovery is possible.
1 in 8 people globally live with a mental disorder.
That's why empowering minds saves lives.
We need your help.
With only $19 a month, you help us save lives through mental health and suicide prevention education.
Scan the QR code or go to makementalhealthmatter.org to sign up as a warrior for mental health today.
Feels good to feel good. Food that sings a rainbow. Feels good to feel good. A joy to watch it grow. Glimmers all around us, so get out there and glow. Feels good to feel good. Let it show. Feels good to feel good. Food that sings a rainbow. Feels good to feel good. A joy to watch it grow. Glimmers all around us, so get out there and glow. Feels good to feel good, and let it show.
And like that, we're back. If you happen to be just tuning in to the Make Mental Health Matter show, thank you so much, whether you are watching or listening. My guests, we're back in the studio. Those of you that are watching and maybe just joined us, which is so fun. It's way more fun to be in person. I think so, at least.
I agree.
So my guest Jesse and I are talking about really his experience through being raised in church or faith-based, and then also going into psychology more on the clinical aspect, and we're just the whole experience in general. So we were talking about, before we went to the break, more of how it's hard sometimes to non-judgmentally listen to people. It really takes a skill, and I know, I mean, there's 3,000 hours that you had to go through. I know with my certification with neurolinguistic programming, it was oh my gosh, I can't even remember how many hours it was, but oh, it was 200, because we, for the base is 200, and then as you want to certify or level up, it's more. And then I actually, because I keep adding certifications, I don't know why, but I went through a peer recovery certification, and theirs is 500 hours. So you just keep adding hours onto all these things, which I know you also have to do throughout the year to keep your license. So with that said, it's not easy to be in these places, but the reason why the hours and doing the thing is so important is because, as a psychologist, as a therapist, as a counselor, as a coach, whatever your title is, we have to be able to help and support people in the best way that we can. And I know, as a psychologist, you help an array of people. So can you talk about like that specifically?
Like who I treat?
Yeah.
Sure. Yeah, like I said, kind of a primary for me, who I really like working with thoughts and religious issues, and that includes existential issues, just like thoughts about death, thoughts about the meaning of life, purpose. So those are fun conversations for me. I also have training with eating disorders, so I did higher level of care with eating disorders for a year. I have that skill. I love working with trauma. So PTSD, I use sensory motor psychotherapy for that. And I love psychosomatics. So I like working with kind of mind-body connections and looking at symptoms that occur that don't necessarily have a medical etiology.
Oh yeah, and that's so a lot of the people that come to my nonprofit are very much in that space. Is that they've had all the tests, they've gone through everything, right, and they still can't explain why they have the pain or why they're feeling the way that they do. Those are very much our people that we attract into our community, and they're a lot of them are at this point that they're just like it's that breaking point of I'm either going to take my life because I want the pain to end, or I'm going to figure this out and see why this is the way that I am. And I do know, or what I love is that we're now starting to talk. Well, it has been for a while, but like really truly now starting to talk about like childhood trauma, also generational trauma, which
Yeah.
is something that we don't always talk about because sometimes I know, especially when you're pregnant, whatever's going on during that time, it can transfer to your child and so on and so forth, like for generations,
Sure.
which is fascinating.
Yeah.
But I love the fact that we're starting to talk about that too.
Yeah, yep. There's some theories that say kind of the further back we go, the more impactful, and it kind of makes sense, right? Your developmental trajectory is set at those times. So
Yeah. And it's, I mean, not to like, I'm like not trying to scare people. But I think it's part of that conversation that we have to start having is like, okay, well, how was the pregnancy like when you were being born and so on and so forth, and talking about the lineage and all the things, which play a factor in everything that we do.
yeah, I had a fun opportunity in grad school. We had a developmental psychology course.
Mm.
And you can't, I mean, you roughly cover the lifespan, right? But then you pick a final project. So for me, it was usually a 10-page paper, and I got to write about an aspect of that, and you study that deeply. And so I did. I had a colleague who had already had her PhD in prenatal and perinatal psychology. So she got me logged into the databases, and I got to just read and read and read about how impactful those early moments are. And some theories say all the way back as far as conception, including like what are mom and dad's emotional state, what are their unconscious thoughts during that time, and how that impacts the formation of the cells that become, a human being. So that was really fascinating, and typically in grad school, it's kind of fun because you get to do some self-exploration. So I wrote a 10-page paper about how I think my developmental trajectory was impacted by those early experiences.
Oh wow! So you're like okay, here we go. Let me figure this out about myself.
Yeah, it's really interesting, and it's that's the fun part about psychology is you apply it to yourself first. You work it out with yourself first before you try and help other people. You want to know what's going on with yourself, and part of that process, especially when we're going backwards like that, we're inferring meaning secondarily. So like we're looking backwards and trying to say it may have been like this and this and this, right? So we're telling a story. And we never have the facts because we can't go back and actually like quantitatively, objectively, like see everything that's happened, but we're making sense of our own story. And that's where those knots can begin to loosen up. And sometimes it's less about, is it true necessarily than what is it helping you,
Oh yeah. Yeah. And that, I mean, because if you ask your parents, right? I don't know. Sometimes my mom, I mention thing and she's like, that didn't happen. And I'm like, yeah, it did. We have those moments of, I'm pretty sure it did.
Yeah.
And I mean, parents, as they forget, like their memories get worse, it's kind of hard to understand what's going on. But I think so my son is 11 years old. And we have way more conversations than I ever would, or ever imagined that we would. And I talk about some, like, I'm like, man, I hope I didn't screw you up too much, right? I had a lot of trauma that happened when I was pregnant with him. And even my daughter, I was 16 when I had her, and there was a lot happening there too. So I reflect on a lot of those things. My daughter's 29 now, and I'm like, okay, you're good. I'm like, I didn't screw you up too much. But I think that like that has to be part of the conversation. but also being able to add, so my brain's going in 20 million different ways, but having the conversations, open conversations, and being able to reflect on our own experiences. I think that's really cool. And I do psychology, some of the classes that I took were my favorite classes that I took when I was in college, and I did abnormal psychology class.
Nice.
It was fascinating because we had a transgender male to female that came in and shared their experience, open book, like we could ask any questions, which, questions probably went to questions that you shouldn't be asking people, but
Sure.
she allowed that space for anybody to ask all the questions just to try to understand her mindset and why the transition. And then we also had a woman who was a mom. She, unfortunately, they call it the incident, and she had postpartum depression, the first baby, and then postpartum psychosis, the second baby, and she unfortunately killed both of her kids due to things not matching up, like in the system. She got institutionalized and they just never connected. And she wanted, like, she talks about it, but she's like, I just wanted to sleep and I wanted them to sleep. And it became this whole, but she goes around and talks to people about it. And I think for me, those were the classes that were the most impactful for me as I was going through my degree.
So unintentionally?
Yes. Yeah. Full psychosis.
Oh, wow.
Didn't understand what was happening.
Kind of Shutter Island.
Yes. Yeah. So
wow,
it was fascinating.
Well, that's fascinating. That kind of like what we call phenomenological contact with someone. You get to hear their lived experience in detail. It's different than just lumping someone in a category and saying you fit this statistic. Now we're really opening that up and learning more about something.
Yeah, which is amazing. That, I mean, just to have a chance to talk to people.
Which we should all do more, and that is ideally a therapist's job. Like with every person we meet, we should be doing that. We should be listening and opening things up rather than fitting you into categories.
Yes. No, and I think that's so important. And I think some people, and I don't know, I mean, I've heard it before, but they're like, I don't want to go see a therapist or I don't want to go see a counselor, just because one, there may be fear of the unknown. Like, what are they going to make me talk about? But also, like, what am I going to uncover? And I think that's where a lot of people are like, well, I'm not going to go talk to somebody because I don't want to do the work.
It's scary and it's hard. And that's why, like, it's really obvious to me when someone comes in who's had therapy before. They already know how to do therapy. But when it's a new person coming in for the first time, there's a bit of an education process and a getting used to it.
Yeah. Well, and it's good to have somebody that makes you feel comfortable when you go in.
Very important. Yeah. You want to feel like you're there and getting what you need.
Yeah. And I always say, I'm like, do you like speed dating? If it doesn't fit, then go find another one, because there's generally a lot of counselors and therapists out there, and I am of the mindset that if one is not the right fit, then there is somebody out there, there is somebody out there that would fit, and find out the specialties. Like, you talk about what you specialize in specifically, but you also have so many other layers that you add into what you do.
Yeah. I had something to say. It just went away.
That's okay. Maybe it'll come back. Well, we are going to go to our last quick sponsor break. So maybe it'll come back while we're at the break.
There we
go. We'll be right back after this quick sponsor break.
1,917 people die daily from suicide globally.
I lost my middle sister, Carrie, to a completed suicide on February 20th, 2017.
How does Kelli, host of the Make Mental Health Matter show, impact lives?
Number 1, awareness.
My story, however, it isn't unique. I am a domestic violence survivor and a recovering addict. For 14 years, I was in active addiction. And because of Kelli and the work that she does and the opportunity to have my voice heard, I was able to stay clean and sober and have hit a year. I'm still here. And if it wasn't for Kelli answering my call the day that I thought I was going to take my life.
2. Conversation.
I'm curious, and I know that I've heard a lot in the BIPOC community. It is very hush-hush. It's like one of those things that you don't talk about. Like, you literally feel like it's not a conversation you can have. So can you talk a little bit more about that?
First, shout out to Kelli, because I'm glad that she asked the question. I researched you before I went on your show, and I saw how real and authentic you were. And I just appreciate the question, because it is different, and we have to have tough, courageous conversations. So yes, I always say I'm a triple diversity threat. I'm a Black woman with multiple disabilities. Now, I'm not really a threat, but to other people, I may be, because people fear the unknown and what they're uncomfortable with.
Number 3. Education.
Kelli's passionate commitment to mental health awareness is a beautiful thing. It's clear in her social media posts, it's clear in the resources that she puts together, in the activities that she provides, her collaboration with organizations, and the consistent way that she continues to deliver a message, encouraging people to understand that they can share openly and to break the stigma around mental health. Kelli's topics cover children and adults, talk about things that we can do as a community, things that we can do individually, and her website is packed with information and resources and all kinds of contacts that you can use to reach out, whether you're dealing with something yourself or you're looking to help somebody else who is struggling. I encourage you to check it out.
And like that, we're back again. If you happen to just be tuning in to the Make Mental Health Matter show, thank you so much, but you're going to have to go back and watch the whole beginning of this. So my guest, Jesse, and I are talking about psychology. Also just lots of different layers in there. Yeah, all kinds of things. This is generally how my show goes. We're just random. But I want to, because my brain started going somewhere, and then I was like, I need to reel that back in, because you also specialize in eating disorders. This is something very close to my family specifically, but also something that I feel like we don't have enough resources around. It is also, I would say, an epidemic with youth that we maybe don't talk about as much as we should. And the resources, I know in Colorado, we have some really good resources. We also have some really great facilities. And not all places have that. So I would love for you to just talk a little bit more about eating disorders.
Sure. Yeah, and Denver is specifically a hub. So, often people who are seeking treatment have to look across multiple states. So Denver is one of these hubs. When I describe eating disorders to people, I use a mushroom metaphor. And the metaphor is like, if you go out into the forest and you find a mushroom, that's the budding fruit. Right, but that under the ground there's this whole layer of mycelium or fungus that's inoculated the ground, and I think eating disorders are like that. We're all infected with the problems, which is largely a cultural disease, but it only fruits in individuals. So a lot of times when we're talking about eating disorders, individuals may carry the symptoms, and then they carry the weight of recovering from those symptoms on their own. But the truth is, when we're helping someone heal from an eating disorder, we have to look at their family systems, and we have to look at social messaging, and we have to start to make changes in the communities that they live in. And so it's like late stage after we've worked through a lot of the eating disorder stuff and helping people get proactive about changing their world,
Yeah. And do you find that, at least with youth, like, is it a learned behavior, or is it, I know you said the mushroom, like, it's all within us and it could possibly fruit or blossom or,
well,
explode.
It's like how many common conversations on a day-to-day basis do we have about weight? Do we have about body image? Do we have about, so it's everywhere. It's in social media, it's in every aspect of our society. So really that's everywhere, but then it pops up in individuals. And I would say, yes, I think it's a cultural disease. And I'm taking that from a book called Crazy Like Us by, I'm gonna have to, I can't think of the author, Ethan Waters, maybe. And he talks about how we actually exported anorexia to China, and how it didn't really exist there before until Western influence came in, and the models, and it started with Princess Diana and an early Chinese model, and then it started to spread from there. So I do think it's cultural and it is learned. So some of my clients who've come to me, it started in ballet class when they were kids, or it started in a dance class and a coach made a comment about, and that was the whole beginning of a life of years and years of eating disorders.
Yeah, and that's, I mean, so my nonprofit, we do a fashion comedy show, but we work with a fashion company that is all genders, all sizes, right? So we also have disabled models, and it's not your standard fashion show by any means. But that was really where the conversation started sparking, was Via, who has been on my show before. She was a model, and she wasn't tall enough, she wasn't skinny enough, right? Like she had all these things that came at her, and she was like, and now she makes adjustable clothing, which is super cool.
Wow.
Because women, we fluctuate. I mean, men do too. But you can, instead of going out and having to buy a whole new wardrobe, you always already have sizes that fit you. You just adjust them, kind of like kids' pants.
Oh, that's cool.
Yeah. I'm like, why hasn't everybody caught on to that? But she does. She talked about the fashion industry and how you have to be a certain size, you have to be a certain height, and all of those things. And then we see all of that on a daily basis. And now social media, we see all of that on a daily basis.
Yeah. I think people significantly underestimate eating disorders. It has the highest mortality rate of any category of mental health disease. And the average recovery time is 7.5 years. That's the average. That means think about how many people are dealing with this for decades.
Yeah, I did not know that was one of the stats. I do know because your heart can just fail, and your blood pressure and all those things. Yeah.
It's very dangerous disease, and the sicker people get, the more delusional their thoughts become. So someone who's literally starving to death and they're ready for like a feeding tube, I've seen it, looks in the mirror and thinks they're fat, and so the more the cognitive abilities in the mind shut down, and the more the disease takes hold, it messes with your ability to evaluate things in reality.
Yeah. We also, we do a film festival, and we had one film, I want to say it was like maybe 3 or 4 years ago, but it was all about an eating disorder. And that was the first time that I think I watched in video of how that looks. Like you can see this really like rail thin person, but then they showed them in a mirror, and like it gives me chills when I think about it, but they showed them in a mirror and how they view themselves.
Yeah.
And that's where you're like, the perception is so different from what we're seeing. And it doesn't help when you tell people you're skinny, you look great, blah blah blah.
Yeah, no. Not gonna help. Yeah, and plus I mean, the truth is, that's one voice, right? They walk out into the world and they're getting reinforced all of these other messages. So, it's like, it doesn't really stand up.
Right.
So it's often a long re-education process where they have to kind of work with themselves and re-educate themselves. Yeah.
So other than, I mean, my experience is that it's, it starts with whether you're not eating enough or you're binging, and then you're purging, and then ultimately it gets to this place, and it like they're hiding it, right? Yep. Most of us know, but we don't know how to ask and what to do until it's like that moment that you're like, I'm taking you to the hospital. Like your heart is like going to be out of your chest or whatever, right? Or they're like really lethargic. So how could we help somebody?
Yeah, that's a hard place to be in, and that's you know, get yourself a therapist, I guess. If it's like someone in the family, if you don't know how to talk to them or have those conversations, that would be my first. Talk to a professional who does know. Maybe you start family therapy. It's a hard conversation. People don't want to be in treatment, especially the first time. They don't want to acknowledge that it's a problem. And it takes weeks or months. And sometimes people wait until they end up in higher levels of care where they have to have supervised care for, it's like until it becomes that crisis. But biggest thing is probably, do you have a good relationship with that person? Have the conversations based on the relationship that's there. And it's not a perfect solution. It's a hard place to be. It really is. And for parents and people who care, it's how do you have those conversations? Very complicated, very hard.
Well, and I mean, I think it's like first recognizing, right? Like what's happening, and then getting them to somebody that can actually help. Because when you avoid and you just don't talk about it, it's not going to go away. It's just going to get worse.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, avoidance doesn't help. Denial doesn't help. So facing the problem, you're right, and then finding out what the best course of action is, and that's usually reaching out to a professional at some point.
And I'm curious, so also in my experience is that they go into facility, then they come out of facility, and then everything in their mind is like magically better. And then it does start to get better, but then there's a transference that happens into possibly something else. Like say, so eating disorder, and then maybe now it's like transference into gym, but it's still the same thing. And we don't, because now they're starting to get healthy, and it seems like it's more of a healthy path versus purging. But really it's just that transference.
So the symptoms can shift, and restriction, when we think about it clinically, it's not just it's about the caloric deficit. So if you're over exercising to compensate for what you're eating, you're still in a deficit. So that's why a lot of athletes end up with eating disorders as well.
Because they're having to do all these things. And I do love that a lot of athletes are now talking about that too.
And there's a really good treatment center here in Denver that specifically focuses on working with athletes. I can't remember which one. I have a few in my head that I've visited, and I don't want to say the wrong one. But
I know there are, because we have partnered with a couple of them over time. So yes, I know that Denver, it really is a good hub for eating disorders. But I think that, and I also know I've had a woman on my show who she had an eating disorder originally, and she's like, it's a lifelong thing, right? It's just like recovery.
Very rare for someone to come out the other side and never worry about their body again. Different degrees with different people, but that's hard.
And I guess if we look at it, like mental health challenges in a way are very similar. I know that people substance use, right, if we think about it that way, right, it becomes this lifelong process or journey that you're going through. It doesn't have to be hard or something that you're stuck in. You can really find those resources and people and the help that you need to be able to have a healthy and fulfilled life, like you were talking about.
Absolutely, and that's the nice thing about eating disorders is you can fully recover from them.
Awesome. And that gives a lot of hope. So if you have anybody in your life that might be struggling with an eating disorder, just know there is hope and you can recover from that. I would love to, so we have about 10-ish minutes left, but I would love to just talk a little bit about, like, what is your favorite thing or maybe situation, story that you have worked with? And then also, I don't know, anything that we haven't talked about.
Favorites, so in what sense, favorite thing that I've worked with?
So maybe like, because you help with like faith-based eating disorders, I believe. Trauma, which you said you really like, which I know it's so weird when you're like, I love working with
Yeah,
trauma.
yeah.
But it's
Sure.
fascinating.
Yeah. So like a story.
Yeah, yeah.
Obviously, I'm going to be very careful about confidentiality. So
Absolutely,
let
yes.
me think. I mean, I have some really, really good therapy stories, and especially on a big public podcast like this, I want to be very careful about what I share.
Maybe something like in relation to trauma, because I think a lot of people, when we say trauma, it kind of freaks them out a little bit. So like what when we talk about trauma, like what does that really mean, I guess?
Yeah, I mean, certainly it means different things to different people. Clinically, when I'm working with PTSD, that's like capital T trauma. Like there's been a specific incident or chain of incidents that were very harmful, usually where there's sort of like intense harm, like sexual assault, fear of death, that sort of thing. And I can only take so many of those cases in my caseload because it is a lot emotionally, and I have to manage what I can work with. But I like working, and I've had the opportunity to work with people who've got severe trauma histories, including someone who was trafficked for 10 years. So that's a long process. That's years of therapy, just as with many other things. And it's very slow work. We have to go sequentially, and we have to build the resources first before we can start to treat the trauma. So we're giving them the tools that they need to be able to then go into slivers of the trauma, and we kind of circle our way towards until we're at the core. But it's fulfilling work, and especially there's times when it's particularly how do you say, like there's big breakthroughs, so I can, and there's these moments in therapy that are like what you read about in books when you're in psychology school, and you're like, I'm going to be this amazing therapist. And you get those every once in a while where it's, I had someone who was assaulted by a family member. They were having these flashbacks regularly, and there was a point when they were ready to do, like, I'm going to go into the trauma and we're going to heal this specific trauma. And so I literally, I held the pillow there for them, and I let them, they knew how to go back into the flashback. They put themselves there, and then this time, instead of being a victim, they pushed. And I would give resistance with the pillow, and they're going to push, and they're discharging that energy from their body. And immediately after that, you see a change in symptoms. The flashbacks stop, and they start having dreams that aren't just vivid dreams of the trauma. And now it starts to get more symbolic. And so we see a shift as the mind is integrating that. So those are always fun moments in therapy. I mean, fun, but
right.
Relatively, it's I mean, they're impactful in those moments where you get to see like somebody make that big breakthrough that really is months and years of like preparation for.
Yeah, and I know, so even when I work with clients on coaching, right? Generally, not generally, but most of the time it's fairly quick, because we also work with the unconscious mind a lot more with the unconscious mind. But it's all about building in those resources first. And I do, most people that come to me, trauma, suicidal thoughts, right? So it's like deep, hard work. But I think the biggest thing that I learned from my mentor is that I don't need to hold people's emotions. Like that was a part of when I first started coaching, that I was like all absorbing everything. And I was like, this is so hard. And then as I went through, more certifications and more education, I was like, learning how to just let it go and let them experience it and not me experience it. But I love that you're like physically using items that will help them move the energy out of their body. And I love, I haven't read all of it yet, but the book, oh my gosh, my brain.
Body Keeps
a
Score.
Body Keeps a Score.
Popular one.
Yeah. So I started listening to that, and I know that they talk a lot about veterans and PTSD. But it's fascinating when you think about how much your body stores, and then how releasing it like makes such a huge difference.
Yeah, it does. And it's funny, I've been on Substack recently, and there's a whole movement right now that's sort of countering like these beliefs, and they're like, trauma's not in the body, but I tell you, as a clinician, like, it is. And I've seen it, clients release physically, and that's the moment when things shift.
Yeah.
So
Well, and that's what I mean. I have also noticed that is like when they finally let go, right? And sometimes work stays like, not always, but sometimes therapy, sometimes counseling, right? It's like that surface level.
Mhm.
And I think the good, like you were saying, is like you're getting deep, like going deeper into
Yeah.
the layers. And then you like physically, when we used to always, my brain just, so in our training, we used to always say, if you made somebody cry, then you've done your work.
Yeah.
And not that, I mean, it became this competition almost in a way. That sounds horrible. We're not using people that way, but it means something once you get somebody to cry, is because now they're releasing that energy through emotions.
100%. Yeah.
Which I know for me, there was such a big time in my life that I didn't show any emotions like that. I was just like, no, I won't. And now I cry on camera.
Oh yeah, I've had clients in my room just full body shaking and like moaning in this process that your body just has to, it's ancient, it's primal, it's instinctual, and your body knows what to do with this, but you have to let it, which means you have to learn how to shut down the socialized part of the brain that says this is weird, and be able to let yourself go through these processes. And that can be really powerful. It's not for everyone. It's context dependent,
Definitely.
So it's not like, come to therapy, you're going to be shaking and wailing, but
Yeah, that doesn't happen with everybody, I promise. Yeah.
And
but,
to your point of depth, like you attended my workshop yesterday on dreams, and
yes.
so that's like, I love dreams giving me kind of like a backdoor access into the unconscious too, and we work from there sometimes.
Yeah, I was really, so in my psychology degree, I did a dream interpretation class.
Yeah.
And it was all about Freud and all about Jung. And so I was like, like all the information when you were talking about that, which their theories behind all of that are very interesting. And when I went through that class, I was like, I don't know if I believe any of this, but that was what they found way back in the day. And now we're finding even more. And so I like the symbolism, but also like it doesn't have to symbolize. Yeah. And that was something like you mentioned also, is like it doesn't always have to be symbolic. Like it doesn't just mean it's me and my mom or
I think
whoever.
dream work really needs to get updated in popular. I don't know, maybe I need to write a book on that.
Yeah, there you go.
Because there's good stuff there, and it can be such a useful clinical tool, but I think most people get exposure to Jung or Freud and those approaches, but there's more. I think there's more sophisticated stuff out there today.
Yes.
So,
yes. Yeah.
Yeah.
No, I thought it was really good. So if you want, if anybody wants, because we are coming close, if anybody wants to work with you or they want to learn more about your workshops, because you also do workshops, how can they find you? Like, what is the best way for them to reach out?
Riverbed Psychology is the practice that I work for. So you can just look that up online. I'm on there. It tells about what I do, individual therapy and assessment.
Nice. And that is River, RIVER, bed, BED.com.
Riverbedpsychology.com.
Psychology. Okay. Riverbed Psychology. Just Google it.
Google it. You'll find me. Or look on your show, because I assume you'll.
Oh yes, yes. I will drop all the links in the comments, so they can definitely get all of those. And then if anybody wants to do your workshops, that's also the same place.
Yep, I've got. I don't have anything up on there for it, but August 9th. I don't know. We'll have to work something out. I'm doing climate change and psychology on August 9th.
Okay.
Yeah.
Cool. Well, this was awesome conversation. I know you were like, I don't even know what I'm going to talk about, and that's usually how all my shows
about
go.
everything.
Yeah, exactly. We just went around the whole entire
canon of psychology.
Yes. Well, I'm just so glad that you came on the show and we were able to just tap into a couple things, right? We did talk about a lot of information, but ultimately, if you have anybody in your life that needs help as related, whether it is eating disorders or maybe it is faith-based, or maybe it's wanting to learn more about dreams and interpreting dreams or just talking in general, on a clinical level. Maybe you are a mental health professional that wants to get tapped into more of the network, especially inside Colorado. Make sure we'll list all the information. So thank you so much. This was a great conversation.
Absolute pleasure to be on here with you.
Cool. Well, this was a great episode of the Make Mental Health Matter show. I appreciate you all watching or listening. As a reminder, I go live every single Monday at 5 a.m. or 5 p.m. on Dream Vision 7 Radio, or you can watch on E360 TV at 5 p.m. all Mountain Denver time. No matter what, make sure you come back next week because I don't know. We'll see if I have a guest for next week or not. I don't know. It's always a mystery. But I'll see you later. Bye, y'all.
Thank you for joining today for the Make Mental Health Matter show. We hope you found today's episode insightful and empowering. Remember, your mental health journey doesn't end here. For more resources, support, and information, visit us online at makementalhealthmatter.org. You won't forget to subscribe to our show or follow us on social media to stay connected and continue the conversation, will you? That's right. Together, let's make mental health matter. Until next time, take care of yourselves and each other.